Hey glue troopers, and welcome back to the TARDIS. We got a lot of work done on the engines today. Since I got a little bit earlier start, we still had real world things that took some attention, but I got a little bit earlier start, and it's 8 o'clock in the evening here, a little after, and I don't know if I'm packing it in for the night or not. I might sneak back out here and do some more, but I got a bunch of things hardening. Now, I want to talk about these engines a little bit. Now, I'm sure we've all built models with gobs of little teeny tiny parts. Well, these engines, no shock, as we talked about earlier, they pretty much personify that. Given their complex shapes and everything, they can be really hard to clamp down. Now, the tiny, first thing I did, just to get out at the beginning of things, I went ahead and painted the engines with what I had already done. I knew there were a lot of little parts that were going to go on. I knew those had to be pre-painted, but I had the main components together, and it was as tough as you thought painting around things, but since it's mostly blacks and grays, the little blemishes that are so hidden down in there that you really can't see them, and to be honest, they just look like any oily engine. So it all came out okay. I did have to mix the color for the wood struts. I didn't have a proper yellow light wood, so that was a mix that took me a few tries. And the rest of the parts I went ahead and painted on the sprue. The main colors you're going to need are black, battleship gray, semi-gloss black, battleship gray, that wood color. And those are your three big ones. I had to mix the rust color for the exhaust pipes. And I have some of that powdered rust, so I use that as my little cue card for what paints to mix to get it. I mean, when I know to get it right, it's basically beiges and browns until you get it right. But the one that's really different is there's the water pipe that goes all the way around the bottom of the engine, and that's copper. And I have some acrylic copper, so that was no problem. That was without a doubt the trickiest piece, because it both plugs into two holes in the radiator and also plugs into a hole in back, and then there's a part that goes up underneath it that it gets on, and of course, even though the parts are really good, there's still a little fitting. But then you have the two attach points on each side, and I had to pre-paint that, but you know how anytime you have the parts are so small, you're going to get some paint on the it's hard to get plastic on plastic without the little paint getting in there. That little fine glue helped, but that of course softens the paint, and then you have to find a way to clamp it and hold everything in place. And that's an extremely fiddly part. The only saving grace is it's not terribly small, but it's hard to access because it has to go underneath the brace that's on the front of the engine V strut. So it's not like super duper hard, but there's a lot to it. And part of me was like, I really would like to paint this part afterwards, just so you guys know how it goes when you're trying to move parts around that have already been painted. It's so easy to knock the paint off of them. But I figured, now I better pre-paint this. I did. I gave it a chance to gas out enough that I could handle it, slid it in, and getting those things into the little, and it is, believe it or not, it's actually easier to have the radiator already in place. If you start trying to fit the radiator afterwards, say, well, I'll just take about, then I'll just fit it, then you wind up to me, it was easier to have the radiator in place because the parts are pretty flexible. You just need some really fine tweezers that you can get down there and bend them, poke them into the little hole that's there for them, and there you go. It's the usual stuff. And then you start adding, you got to drill out you got to drill a 1 millimeter hole in a side brace to put one of the oil pipes, drain pipes in, and then you have the oil drain pipes that go on the top, and then you have the other, and this, no surprise, an engine of this technology has oil pipes and water cooling pipes going everywhere. You notice this is an air-cooled engine. There's big radiators up front, and it's a lot of the parts are actually fairly accessible. It's just how small they are, but it's every bit the fiddly little mess that you would think it would be. But you keep focused on what you're doing, because this isn't a lost cause. This airplane generally flew without cowling, so you will get to see the results of your work when you look at the model. The only downside is it kind of forces you to do a good job, because you'll be able to see all the work. Now, one thing about that water cooling pipe that goes on bottom is that it will actually, not only does it have like these 6 attach points that you need to get lined up, but then you have these other 2 water pipes that were already installed earlier on the engine that you have to mate up with it. It's all part of one system. But given the precision of the Wingnut Wings parts, they came out pretty close. I've got to let everything harden before I go any further with it. I was hoping to do more today, but it's just, I'm getting to that point where I'm starting to want to work on it and finding out that, oh, wait a minute, that thing wasn't, I just nudged another, but I knocked an exhaust pipe off of my knuckle because I thought it was hard in place, and it wasn't. And it can be deceptive, you know, oh, it's firm, it's in place, and you miss it, you knock it off. And there are, even for something as big as those radiators, the attach points are fairly small, so just stuff to be aware of. But it's exactly what I expected when I started working on it, so I'm not complaining, I'm just describing what it was like. But then again, when you're done and the thing starts to take shape, you really start to get that, you're like, wow, you know, that actually looks pretty good. I'm not embarrassed to share this. I mean, it's not as good as the one in the book, obviously. That guy really knows what he's doing, and probably has every tool and technique down to a science. I'm sitting here at my desk pretty much using the stuff we normally get at the hobby shop. But that aside, I'm not unhappy with the way it's starting to look. Once I get these things done, then the center wing will go on, and then we'll start doing some of the rigging, and there's a lot of strut bracing, just a bunch of it. So I saved that paint that I mixed for the wood, and that should be enough to get all the struts painted and everything. I hope so. And those are going to be, now for a primer, instead of priming in gray, I actually primed a lot of the struts in this brown wood color, and then the yellow is going to go over that. And my rationale behind that is simply that way if there's some sort of a bleed through, it'll have more of a woody color to it. And that's that. So that's what I got done today, a lot of fiddly little parts. I also got some information for a couple more history videos. I'm working on 3 videos right now, and that is, of course, the Doug Davis, which will be a fairly short one, part of the Air Race series. But I'm working on, and they're not going to be real long videos, but one history I'm working on Dragon Models DML, which I've had a lot of requests for, and I didn't realize they've been around as long as they have. And I'm also going to be doing a very short one on Panda New Zealand because, quite frankly, someone in New Zealand pretty much sent me most of the information. I have not been able to find anything on my own about it. And I'll talk about that when I do the video. Now, the only other thing is that I don't think I have anything scheduled tomorrow, so I can come out here and get to work even if I don't come out tonight. But as I mentioned, I got to go back to work on the 5th. And given my relatively slow progress on this thing, I figured I'd have this, with a month off, I would have this model done before I went back to work. I'm starting to have doubts about that. And part of it's not the number of days off. It's you know, you come out, and we all know you start working on this isn't a job. This is something I do because I love it. But if you give yourself a deadline, that can be a double-edged sword. It can keep you on task, but you can also find yourself working when you're not in the mood, and you get that let's get it done mentality instead of let's make a nice model mentality. And that's not a happy place to be. So if I don't get it done before I go back to work, it's not the end of the universe. But I have all of these other models staring at me just going, you know, well, we know who your favorite is. And my favorite model is the one I'm working on. And it's like that old joke by, if you guys ever watched the comedian Jeff Dunham, he's got that... he's a ventriloquist. He has Bubba J, you know, what's your favorite beer? An open one. And it's like, what's your favorite model? The one I'm working on. And you know, it's funny. I'll sit at home and here at home, and it's like I'll be working on a model. I'll look up and I'll start going, boy, I'd sure like to build that model, or I want to get started on that model. And it's like when you're working on one, you start to think about the other one you want to build. And it's like when you're eating pizza, thinking about spaghetti. And it's like, now that I've got what I want, I'll let my mind drift to something else I wanted. I guess it's kind of like the old, if I understand the proper way to say the phrase is to eat your cake and have it too, which is or something along those lines when you want to do something, you get started on it, and you start getting into it, and after a while, that creative urge starts going, okay, we're doing this. Now that we're already doing this, let's look at that and start thinking about this when we should be focused on that. I don't know, and of course that doesn't just apply to models, it applies to anything we do. And I don't know why it is that you work on something and you start thinking about something else that you're excited to do. I guess it's just part of the creative spirit. It's like once you've started working on something, the creativity center of the mind has said, okay, this mission is being accomplished. We're moving away from the creativity center into the function center. So the creativity center says back here going, we've made a choice. The construction crew is now doing that. The architect wants to go design something else. Yeah, let's go with that. But that's what we got. We did get some rain here this afternoon. It was going to be a grungy day. I thought about going out flying RCs in the morning, but I think I'm just going to come out here and work on this. So that's where we're at, guys. I really don't have much else. Hope you're having a wonderful evening. And of course, as always, model on.